Arthur Morgan is often seen as a man redeemed by death. But I don't think that's true, because what if he never got sick? Would he have actually changed? Or would he have kept believing there was always more time? Arthur was a man whose presence commanded respect from the very beginning. Confident, capable, and almost literally unshakable. And that's exactly why his story hits so hard. To me, death didn't redeem Arthur. It simply took away the illusion that he still had time. And honestly, if anyone in the Vanderlyn gang could have changed how everything ended, it was going to be him.
Abigail? And you?
I need you to... I'm sorry to ask, but...
It's little John. He's got himself caught into a scrape again.
He ain't been seen in two days.
Your John will be fine.
Arthur was a proud man, the kind of person who did whatever it took to protect the people around him. And even if he didn't know you, he'd still give you a fair chance.
Yes, it's okay. We're bad men. We ain't them. It's okay. Get on. We'll keep you safe until you figure out what you want.
To Arthur, violence wasn't something to fear or avoid. It was normal, a tool, a way of handling the world he grew up in. But that doesn't mean he used it carelessly. He rarely acted without a reason, without some kind of motive behind it. The complicated part is this: when members of the gang chose violence recklessly, Arthur didn't usually stop it.
Your friends, the patriots, gonna come and rescue you, you repulsive little maggot! Call them now! You call them! Jesus. Part of your philosophy books cover feeding a fella. The goddamn alligator.
You can see the moral discomfort on his face, but his loyalty, especially to Dutch Vanderlyn, who was basically a father figure, often outweighed his doubts. I always said that Arthur always seemed to view life in phases, like whatever chaos they were involved would eventually pass. Another job or escape, revenge, survival, freedom, it all blended into the same repeating cycle. And that's where the real question starts to form. Did Arthur ever truly believe this life had an end? Because from our perspective as players, we can see the pattern clearly. We keep expecting change, yet nothing usually changes. This is Arthur before he knows he's sick, confident in his strength, and dismissive of danger. Mary Linton's farewell letter even points to this conflict directly. She says the good man inside Arthur is wrestling with a giant. And honestly, that describes him perfectly. He truly believed in the outlaw code and loyalty he's been raised with since childhood. That belief, along with the assumption that there was always more time, was enough to keep him moving forward without really questioning where it would all end. But time was never actually on Arthur's side, and the first real warning of that comes later in Saint Denis. After collapsing in the streets of Saint Denis, Arthur makes his way to the doctor, only to hear the worst possible news: tuberculosis.
Really sorry for you, son. It's a hell of a thing.
Dr. Barnes delivers her gently, but the message is clear. There is no cure. Arthur isn't just sick, he is now living on borrowed time. And at first, he mostly keeps going like nothing happened. Honestly, it feels like he doesn't fully believe it. Maybe he thinks another doctor might say something different. Maybe there's still a way out, but it doesn't work like that. Time is no longer something he has control over. And for a while, denial becomes his shield, but not for long. One of the clearest turning points comes when Arthur helps Edith Downs, the widow of the very man he extorted for money, the same man who unknowingly passed the illness to him. She has every reason to hate Arthur, yet she tells him something that cuts deeper than any diagnosis.
Me and the guilt you're carrying, because no good can come of that for either of us. And all you can do now is decide the man you want to be for the time you have left. Help someone who can still be helped. Or help yourself.
I suppose you're
From
right.
that moment on, you start seeing the shift. Arthur becomes more aware of what's happening around him. The gang falling apart, the people they've lost, and that consequence is finally catching up to him. Watching him try to help others in chapter 6 is honestly hard, because part of him still seems to hope there might be time left, maybe even enough to fix things for himself. And that's why he starts encouraging everyone to find their own path away from the gang, not just to save them, but maybe deep down because he still wonders if he might be able to do the same. Arthur even talks about riding out west once everything settles, trying to find answers for himself. And even if, at some level, he has accepted his fate, there's still a part of him still searching, still wondering what comes out next. And that uncertainty finally surfaces in the conversation with Sister Calderon, the same nun he had helped earlier in Saint Denis. And for the first time, Arthur truly opens up about what's happening to him.
I'm dying, sister.
Okay.
Yeah, I got TB. I got it. Beating a man to death for a few bucks. But I guess I'm afraid.
This is Arthur Morgan, a man who faced gun barrels without hesitation, now openly afraid of the unknown waiting ahead. And the sister responds with a kind of quiet wisdom.
Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
She reframes his fear, not as weakness, but kind of a chance to live whatever time he has left with intention, and to act out of love rather than fear. And from that moment, you really start seeing the shift. Arthur tries to do the right thing, to make peace with his past, and he begins seeing Dutch's decisions for what they truly are by that point, not leadership. But the thing is, Micah's growing influence only pushes Dutch further down that path, making Arthur's warnings easier to ignore. Which brings us back to the uncomfortable question: if Arthur had never gotten sick, would any of this have changed at all? The first thing we have to remember is that once Arthur got sick, a lot of what he said started being dismissed. His words didn't carry the same weight anymore, and people saw it as weakness. Others just stopped listening altogether. Even Dutch, the man who trusted Arthur the most, began brushing off his concerns, and in many ways, that only pushed the gang further apart. And this is where Hosea Matthews becomes incredibly important to the story. His death wasn't just another loss. It was the beginning of the end for the Vanderlyn gang. Hosea's balance. He kept Dutch grounded. He validated Arthur's concerns, and without him, the gang lost one voice that could challenge Dutch without being seen as disloyal. So when you revisit the Saint Denis job, you can't help but wonder if Hosea had survived and Arthur hadn't been sick, would the gang's decline have even played out the same way? Cause by Beaver Hollow, Arthur and John are already being framed as traitors. But if Arthur had been healthy, his warnings might have carried more authority instead of being dismissed as fear or exhaustion. Instead, now he's racing against death, trying to hold his things together while Dutch and increasingly Micah push everything closer to collapse. And that isolation matters, because if Arthur hadn't been alone in those final chapters, if Hosea had still been there to reinforce his perspective, it becomes much harder for Micah to influence Dutch the way he ultimately did. Incidents like the Wapiti might have maybe unfolded very differently. Even smaller moments hint at this. Think about the situation with Leviticus Cornwall near the port. Arthur tries to steer things towards restraint, but by then his condition and his appearance, sometimes even his tone, make people less likely to take him seriously. And that changes how his voice is heard, even when he might actually be right.
Maybe we pushed things too hard. Maybe time for folks like us is past. We don't need a rap. We got sloppier than the town drunk, and they know who we are, and where we are, and what we're doing.
Way I see it, best thing we can do is let the week go. Move on, get our money, start over.
That ain't happening. Well, something's gotta happen, and fast. Otherwise, Cornwall, them Pinkertons, they've got us penned in here, and ain't none of them stopping.
Well, Cornwall's why we're here. Shall we, Dutch?
Yeah, it's time to go. Let's head to the river.
Oh, leave Cornwall alone. He ain't... We need money, but revenge? Now?
Of course it's for money.
Come on, Arthur.
This Better not be no stupid revenge mission, Dutch. It ain't worth it.
Don't be ridiculous.
Oh, Arthur, it's just a simple social call.
On the other hand, I do think Dutch's decline probably would have happened regardless. His struggles seemed bigger than any other person could fully stop. Even when Arthur challenged him early on, Dutch was already beginning to drift. But back then, Arthur still had enough respect that Dutch would at least hesitate, sometimes even hold himself back. And once Arthur got sick, though, that dynamic shifted completely. Dutch started seeing things differently, almost like he and Micah were still strong enough to push forward for the gang, clearly knowing that is not a thing, still chasing that idea of freedom. Meanwhile, Arthur was just slowly being sidelined, dismissed as weak, constantly reminded of his illness. Take a look at Micah calling him Black Long all the time, becoming more than an insult, almost a way to just invalidate everything he is saying. And that's where you start wondering again, if Arthur had been healthy and if Hosea had still been alive, things could have been contained maybe earlier. Maybe Dutch's mental decline would have been taken more seriously. Maybe people would have questioned Micah sooner, or maybe the gang could have distanced themselves before everything spiraled out of control. Because it's honestly incredible how one illness reshaped the entire trajectory of the story. Because before Arthur got sick, most problems still felt repairable. But once time became limited, everything literally accelerated. Responsibilities piled up and the gang fractured faster. And Arthur found himself increasingly alone, trying to protect others while fighting something he could not defeat. And I can't help but imagine a slightly different ending. Not necessarily one where nobody dies, because that world rarely allows clean escapes. But maybe one where Arthur isn't defined by an illness cutting his time short. Maybe one where the thing that ultimately ends his story is simply time itself, not a disease that forced clarity before he was ready. But at the end of the day, going through all of this is what ultimately shaped Arthur into the man we see at the end. Tuberculosis led him to the conversations we talked about, the moment that forced him to reflect on his life, on the choices he'd made, and what he still had time to do. And maybe that's the uncomfortable truth here about this game. If Arthur had found a way to fight the illness, he might have continued down the same path of quiet acceptance without ever fully taking any action whatsoever. The diagnosis didn't just change his perspective, it pushed him to act. And because of that, a lot of people benefited. Some left the gang and never looked back. Others survived long enough to build something better. Often because Arthur gave him that final push, he shaped people's lives at the very end. And he did it without expecting anything in return. In fact, he knew there probably wouldn't be anything in return. And maybe that's why this question stays so interesting. That version of Arthur without tuberculosis is probably the version that we as players would have wanted to see continue. The strong enforcer, the man who solves problems head on, the one who might have eventually dealt with Micah in the way he handled most threats. But being sick forced him into something different. It made him slower and more reflective. Most of his actions were mostly about meaning. And maybe that's the real tragedy of Arthur Morgan. Not that he changed, but that it took losing time for him to finally understand how to use it. I'm interested to hear what you think what would have happened if Arthur had never gotten sick. Lots could have changed. And here, time was the real antagonist. And please leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you like this video so you don't miss on new uploads of this beautiful journey of character storytelling.
Found something down at the train station by the lake, apparently. And Strauss came back with that creepy little smile on his face. I'm sure there's a whole list of unfortunates he's...